Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my top 20 books of 2023. So first of all, I can't believe that we are already to the end of 2023, that this year has come and gone already. It was such a great year. I went on so many trips this year, whether for book signings or trips with my family, vacations, all of those things, road trips. But then of course, also for reading, I did read over 500 books for the year. I was able to narrow it down to my top 20, and I'm so excited to get into them and chat about all of them. It was so fun putting together my favorites of the year list and reminiscing about some of these books that I read earlier in the year. Definitely made me want to reread some of them because I love them so much. Over 500 books is definitely a ton. Actually, surprisingly for me, this year was a year of slowing down my reading. So for the previous, I think 2 or 3 years at least, I had always read over 600 books a year. And so this year, yeah, definitely slimmed down on the reading, but there was more trips, more vacations, more time spent on YouTube making videos, just all of those things that kind of take my time elsewhere, which I mean, I'm not mad about at all of those extra trips and family time and all of the things. So of course, as always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I ever talk about, I do review every single book that I read on Goodreads. I've been doing this for I think 4 years now. So there are thousands of reviews that I've written out there for all of the books that I read. So definitely go check that out. Goodreads is always linked in the description of all of my videos. I also thought it would be fun just to kind of reminisce about all of the trips and the things that I did this year. I saw my friend Jess from Peace Love Books. She did a video for this as well, kind of like looking back at the year, and I wanted to just do some highlights as well. So in February, my family and I, my husband and daughter, we went to Maui, which was so much fun in Hawaii. We went for 2 weeks and it was such a great time. I'm so glad we got to go there before the island was devastated by the fires later in the summer. Such a beautiful place. I loved it so much. Definitely one of my favorite places that I have traveled to. Such a great trip. I'll insert some photos here and all of that. I do have a vlog for that whole trip as well. So if you want to go check that out, I think I'll link all the vlogs that I'm going to chat about in the description of this video as well. So you can look back at my year with me. And then March was the first book signing of the year. So I went to a Reader's Take Denver, which of course was in Denver, Colorado. That one was so much fun. It was just a weekend trip. I think it was 2 days of signings. I went specifically to see and meet Beverly Jenkins for the first time, like a queen of historical romances. I was so excited to meet her. It was just so fun, seeing her chat on the panel, getting to talk to her one-on-one at her table, such a fun time and just an icon. Loved it so much. Also saw a bunch of other authors there as well. So there was Elsie Silver, Pam Godwin, we saw Rebecca Yarros, got to meet Amelie Howard and Jana McGregor. Also got to see there Sarah Kate, Nikki Sloan, Nikki Castle, Naima Simone, Greer Rivers. Trying to think of who else was there. There were so many authors there. It was just such a fun signing. We also just got to go around Denver, so we got to eat at a bunch of fun places. We also went to a hockey game while we were there, which was so much fun. Loved that so much, and just a fun time with friends and seeing authors and all of that. Then in April, went to Love in Seattle with some book friends again and got to meet some authors there as well. This was a smaller signing, but it was just so much fun to go there. When I'm traveling from Alaska, Seattle is a place that we always connect to. I love Seattle. I've been there so many times. I actually grew up in Washington, so I love Seattle and going there. So any trip to Seattle, I'm gonna be there. And this trip was just a lot of fun. I think the authors that I got to see there were Catherine Cowles, Elsie Silver, S.C. Stevens was there, which was fun. Also Laura Pavlov, S.J. Silvis, just a bunch of authors. And then also got to do some things around the city while we were there. So to Pike's Place Market. I think we went there every single morning, every day, which was so much fun because the hotel was just, I think 4 or 5 blocks away. So it was just easy to just walk down there. Did Pike's Place. We did the Space Needle, which was so fun. And just those kind of touristy things. Saw the gum wall, ate at a fun restaurant, all of the fun stuff. Of course, I have a vlog for that signing as well, so I'll link it in the description of the video. And then in May, I was back home and we did some family trips. So we went to a seaside town. We went up to the North Pole in Alaska and just all of those fun things. I have vlogs for those as well. And in June was the start of summer in Alaska. So we do a ton of road trips with my family every year where we go camping and we get out and about. And then at the end of June was also a book bonanza, which was a signing in Dallas, Texas, which was a lot of fun. Also very chaotic. It was so busy. So many people, a lot of bookish people, tons of authors. There were so many authors there to see. I think the highlight was definitely Ruby Dixon. Getting to meet her at her very first signing was so much fun. And just seeing a bunch of other authors. I think I saw Fiona Cole. There was a bunch of authors that I've seen before that I got to see again, like Kat Singleton and Laura Pavlov, Catherine Cowles. Also got to see Abby Jimenez there and Liana De La Rosa. Saw Devaney Perry, Tegan Hunter, Jessica Hawkins, Lauren Asher, Sarah Kate again, she's at every signing, Shay Savage, B.B. Easton, Melanie Harlow, Elizabeth O'Rourke, so many authors. It was just such a fun time. There were so many bookish friends there as well. So we did a whole big dinner with everybody. I think there was 20 of us. And then a lot of just like individual hangouts as well with friends and different friend groups, and then got to see a lot of people for the first time in person and meet other bookish friends who are on Instagram and things like that. So that was so much fun. Definitely chaotic and busy and wild, but it was a good time. I'll have the link to that whole signing vlog in the description of this video as well. And then in July, it was again more road trips, more trips around Alaska. We go camping a lot. We have like RVs and stuff like that. So we are not camping like in tents, like we are glamping, but it is a fun time. We have like four-wheelers and ATVs, and we just like go out and adventure, fish, all the things. Then at the end of July, my mom and I went back to Seattle because we had tickets for Taylor Swift's Eras tour, which was so much fun. We had great seats. We were right front and center, and we were kind of like in that 100 row. So kind of like the first little lift after the floor seating, which was so much fun. It was a dream. Loved it so much. Being around like all of those Swiftie fans together and going with my mom was just such a fun time. Definitely a great weekend. We just spent like a couple other days in Seattle as well. Just kind of had like a girls trip, and it was so much fun. August is my birthday month, so we did a bunch of more family road trips and camping and going to different places to go fishing. We go all over Alaska kind of in the summer. That is how our summers always are. So very busy, usually gone every weekend. Also went to the Steamy Lit book signing in California, which was in Anaheim. So that was so much fun. Went for I think 5 days total. We went a day early and got to do Disneyland with a bunch of friends, which was so much fun. I'm a Disney girl forever. I love Disneyland. I've been so many times. I used to go every year back before like pandemic days. So I love Disneyland and love being there, and it's always just a fun time. Weather was hot, but like not super duper hot. Like I've been there when it's hotter, definitely, but we also had like no lines, which was such a rarity. It was like easy breezy to walk through places and barely any lines. It was just like a dream. I think it was like the first week of school there. And so that was kind of perfect, honestly. Like it was such a fun time at the park. And then the Steamy Lit book signing was also so much fun. So it was a 2-day signing for the weekend, and it was run so well. It was their first one, but it was run so well, so great. Got to see so many friends and authors. It was just like a great time. There was a big signing, but like it was done and handled so well. They did such a good job. I can't wait to go back next year. Then September was kind of a chill month, like back to school and all of that. I homeschool my daughter, so we were doing that. Then in October, at the end of the month, was the Love in Vegas book signing, which was so much fun. It was held, of course, in Las Vegas. That was my second time going to the signing, and it was just a great time. Went with a bunch of friends again. We went some extra days. We did shows, multiple shows. We just went around, ate at a bunch of amazing places, and had such a fun time. The signing was also very chill, very relaxed than how it was the previous year. So loved that so much and just had a great time. I love that city because there's like so much to do, so much energy. Everybody's always awake all the time. I love it. So it's such a fun year filled with so many trips. I do have vlogs for all of those trips that I just mentioned, so I'll link them all in the description of this video. Yeah, that was my 2023. Can't wait for 2024. I already have more signings ahead and trips and things, and I cannot wait. It's going to be such a fun time. Let me know if you went on any fun trips or went to any signings in 2023, or if you have anything planned for 2024. I'd love to know too. We're quickly going to jump into my top 20 books of 2023. Like I said, I read over 500 books, so narrowing this down was both hard and kind of easy once I started to look at them. So the ones that like stood out and meant so much to me, I definitely had way more 5-star reads for the year, but these are like the ones that are amazing and wonderful, and I keep thinking about them and love them so much. So yeah, I think my top 5 is definitely set. Like I have my top 5 for sure, and then after that they're kind of all great and amazing, so we'll jump into it that way. So my favorite book of the year was An Optimist's Guide to Heartbreak by Jennifer Hartman. This is book 1 in her Heart Song duet, and I love this one so much. If you love like a grumpy, broody hero, grumpy sunshine vibes, this book is definitely it. I love the duet so much, but the first book is definitely my favorite. In this one, the heroine and the hero actually knew each other as children. They were all friends along with his sister, but tragedy struck them and they kind of split up, went different ways, and so it is years later now, and the heroine has moved back to their old neighborhood. She actually purchases the hero's house that he grew up in with his sister, and she is determined to find the hero, track him down, and reconnect with him. And so she ends up meeting him. He owns a now car shop, like a mechanic shop, and she goes in there and is expecting him to be surprised and happy and giddy and all of these things, and he is definitely not. He's very closed off, very cold, very grumpy, broody, stoic, all of those things. He definitely tries to push her away, but she's determined to bring joy and happiness and light and love back into his life, and so it kind of goes from there. I love this book so much. Like I want to reread it immediately. repeatedly. I think I'm gonna reread this duet for the beginning of the year. Like, I just loved it so much. Definitely check it out. And my second favorite book of the year is The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. This one is so good. It's the second book in the Windy City series. This one we have a basketball hero, and the heroine is his sister's best friend who has to move in with him. They become roommates. Kind of goes from there. He's not wanting to kind of open up his house to somebody new, have somebody in his place. He's used to being on his own, but of course he loves his sister, so he's kind of willing to put up with her best friend moving in with him. It goes from there, where at first they try to kind of keep their distance, but then eventually he ends up realizing that she could help him out, so he pretends to fake date her for reasons with his career and his job and with the basketball team. And so it kind of goes from there. Love their banter. Love this one so much. Like, Liz Tom Ford was definitely a favorite discovery of this year, I think, for a ton of us. So yeah, definitely check out The Right Move and Ryan Shea if you haven't yet. Next up is Iced Out by C.E. Ricky. I love this one so much. This one is an enemies to lovers hockey romance where the two heroes are rivals at first with hockey, and then eventually end up becoming teammates, so they have to work together, but they still like hate one another. They end up hooking up one time at a party, and then after that their team wins. So one of the heroes is like, hockey superstitions and all, like, this obviously worked, we have to keep giving in, kind of these enemies with benefits situation to help the team win all the time. It goes from there. The hate to love, enemies to lovers bit is so good. I love this one so much. It sent me down a spiral of other C.E. Ricky reads this year, and I loved it so much. If you haven't read it yet, I definitely recommend. Then next up is Echoes of You by Catherine Cowles. This is book 2 in the Lost and Found series, and I loved this book so much. This is actually my favorite Catherine Cowles book to date. I love it so much. This one is best friends to lovers, their childhood friends. The heroine ends up moving back to town. She needs protection, and for reasons, which of course gets discovered as the story goes, and the hero is just uber protective. He has this like who did this energy, like he says that at one point. It is just so good. Romantic suspense vibes, all of the protectiveness energy. I love this one so much. Small town, so good. Definitely recommend the Lost and Found series if you're new to Catherine Cowles. The next up is After the Storm by Laura Pavlov. This is book 5 and the final book in the Cottonwood Cove series, and another small town gem. Love this one so much. This is a second chance romance between the hero. He is a vet in his small town. He is a single dad as well. And the heroine is a lawyer, and she just got divorced, and she ends up coming back to the small town. They knew each other as teenagers, as children, and they reconnect, and it goes from there. So much banter and swoon, and this great big family that have so much love for one another, and I love them so much. This book had me crying and laughing and swooning and crying some more. Like, I loved it so much. Like, the epitome of a second chance, a single dad, a small town romance. If you love those tropes, definitely read After the Storm. Next up is A Rogue's Rules for Seduction by Ava Lee. So this is the third and final book in her Last Chance Scoundrel series, and I love this one so much. This again is another second chance romance, and this one the hero actually jilted his bride, left her at the altar in the first book in the series, and now this is their second chance together in book 3. Basically, they weren't ready for that marriage back then and didn't know it at the time, but they've had a year to kind of think about it and discover who they are. And so they realized they barely knew each other back then, and it was probably a good thing they didn't get married, but they definitely have a lot of hurt and trauma to work through in this book. This is a historical romance, and they end up on the same Scottish Isle together when their friends and family kind of push them together at this house party and are like, figure it out, you can't leave the island until the weekend is over. So it kind of goes from there. It is so good. Learn a lot about their families and history as well. Basically, the heroine, I think she's the daughter of an earl, so she's always been kind of like society's princess, and everybody loves her. She has had everything, where the hero has come from nothing, and his family kind of built themselves up and became a part of society, but he's always felt like he's on the outside and doesn't fit in, wasn't worthy of her. So, it is so good. Like, definitely recommend if you love second chance and historical romances, read this book immediately. Next up is Ruthless Duke by Scarlett Scott. This is book 1 in her Rogues Guild series, another historical romance. Love this one so much. Scarlett Scott is one of my favorite indie historical romance authors. If you haven't read her yet, I definitely recommend. This one is a Guardian Ward setup. So in here, the hero was friends with the heroine's father, and then he didn't realize that when her father passed away that he was going to leave his daughter, the heroine, to the hero as his ward. So he can't stand her when the story starts. She's always getting under his skin, talking back, just being very sassy and spirited and all of those things. And here we have a 10-year 7-year age gap. The heroine is like 2021, the hero is 30. Kind of goes from there of him trying to get her married off and get her out of his house immediately, but he has feelings for her as well. It's becoming this kind of compromised situation that they're in where it leads to a marriage of convenience. It goes from there. So much sass, so much spiritedness from the heroine. I love sassy heroines who talk back to heroes. The banter in this one, so good. Definitely recommend checking it out. Next is The Notorious Lorda Knightley by Lorraine Heath. Lorraine Heath is one of my historical romance queens. I love her books so much. In this book, this is the second book in her Chessman series, and in here we have another second chance romance, if you can't tell. That's one of my favorite tropes of all time. And here, the heroine and the hero, he actually left her on their wedding day and told her like the whole thing was a joke. He was never into her. It was never a big deal. So her reputation ends up getting ruined and so much scandal around her. So we cut to, I think, 5 years later, and they are now back in one another's lives. The heroine has taken to anonymously publishing these like scandal sheets about him, about this Lord K. And so everybody kind of figures out that it's about him. And so he goes to her and is like, hey, I want this to stop. Like, it's ruining my reputation. And it goes from there. They're back in one another's lives. As always with the Lorraine Heath reads, like the synopsis and the blurb is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more that happens in this one. Loved it so much. If you loved Lorraine Heath, definitely check this one out. Next is What We Broke by Marley Valentine. So this is a romance, kind of marriage in trouble, marriage on the rocks, and very angsty, very emotional. So just know that going in, there are definitely content warnings for this one, which I have linked in my Goodreads review, and I know other people do as well. So definitely check it out if you need content warnings. This one starts off with a tragedy where the two heroes end up going kind of opposite directions. It deals with addiction and self-doubt and suicidal ideation as well. So definitely know that going in. This one is just so beautiful, so good. I love seeing these two heroes come back to one another, making their marriage work. And it is just so emotional, so beautiful. I really enjoyed Marley Valentine's books this year. Next up is The Neighbor Favorite by Christina Forrest. This one was so cute and so fun. This was actually my first time reading this author. I think this is her adult debut, and it was so good. I love this one so much. This is basically a friends to lovers, neighbors romance. Also has secret identity as well. This one, the heroine works in the book industry. I think she works in nonfiction, and she wants to become like a children's book editor. And so one day she ends up writing to her favorite fantasy author, which ends up being the hero, and he answers. They kind of correspond and email back and forth, and when it comes time for them to agree to meet one day, he ends up ghosting her. It kind of goes from there. She's hurt because they had talked for quite some time, and she can't believe like he didn't show up. So then we cut to later on. She has this new neighbor who, of course, happens to be her old friend / the hero, which she doesn't realize at the time. I think neither of them realize at first. It is so good. Like, I think we know where it's going to be going, and I just love this one so much. So cute, so sweet. I loved in here all the like bookish love and the love for fantasy books. So good. Definitely recommend this one if you haven't checked it out yet. Next up is When the Earl Met His Match by Stacey Reed. This is book 4 in her Wedded by Scandal series. This series you can definitely read out of order. They're all standalones. This one, the hero and the heroine actually meet through letters. So it starts off as like this epistolary romance where he puts out this advert in the paper looking for a bride. She sees it, can't believe the gall of him, and decides to start sassily writing back to him, and they start to develop this friendship from there. Then some things happen in her life where she ends up becoming compromised and needs to get married quickly. So she proposes to him in her last letter to him and is like, hey, would you do this like marriage of convenience with me? Doesn't wait for his answer. She just shows up at his house, and when she gets there, she realizes that he is mute. He doesn't speak, and so it kind of goes from there, where he was kind of raised in the isolated Scottish Highlands with his father, who never wanted his son to marry for love because of his wife leaving them in the past. And so the hero has a lot of trauma and hurt to work through in his own life. I loved in here how the heroine immediately wants to learn like sign language to be able to communicate with him. Just so good. Love this one so much. Stacey Reed is just always a winner. Next up is The Duchess Takes a Husband by Harper St. George. This is the 4th and final book in her Gilded Age Heiresses series, and this one is so good. So basically in here we followed this heroine's story from the prologue of book 1. We see her end up getting forced into this marriage to the aristocracy in England, and she's very unhappy. Basically in here we follow all these dollar princesses or American heiresses who were forced or married into British aristocracy back in the like late 1880s to the early 1910s. So in here the heroine was actually widowed now, and so she's no longer married to the guy that she was forced into marriage with. So now she kind of wants to take back her own life. She doesn't want to marry. She just wants to do what she wants. She ends up going to the hero who owns a local club. He's like a co-owner of it, and she asks him for lessons because she doesn't think that she can enjoy pleasures in life. And so it kind of goes from there. I loved in here how it's not just about the sensual lessons. It's about a lot of emotional depth for both of the characters as well that they work through. Just so beautiful, so good. If you haven't read this series yet, pick up this book and read it. Next is The Tyrant Alpha's Rejected Mate by Casey Wells. This is the first book in her 5-packs series, and this one I loved so much. At the time, I wanted to read something different, so I jumped into this werewolf wolf shifter book. Loved it so much. This whole series is about rejected mates, which I'm obsessed with that trope now. Basically in here, the heroine's kind of later in life to shift, to find her wolf form, to find her mate, all of those things. And so she ends up realizing that the hero, who is the alpha of the pack, is her mate one day. She feels the bond and can't believe that he's not wanting to be pulled to her as well. And so he kind of publicly rejects her and is like, I don't feel anything, like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I loved in here how the heroine kind of decides to, instead of like going and pouting or trying to win him back, she's like, okay, forget him. Like, I need to go to this wise woman of the pack, get her to pull my mating bond out. Like, let me just move on with my life. She ends up doing that and tries to like carry on with her life. And then after that is when the hero kind of realizes that he's pulled to her now. He wants to protect her. He ends up sleeping outside of her house every night to make sure she is cared for and protected, brings her food, all of those things. If you love like groveling and the heroes trying to win back the heroines, definitely read this series. So good. Love the series so much. Next is Lions and Lace by Megan McKinney. This is an older historical romance and I love this one so much. Definitely have to be into or willing to give alpha holes a try to enjoy this book, but I loved it. It's everything that I love in historicals. So basically in here we have a revenge plot. Basically in here the hero came from nothing. He grew up on the streets of Ireland and lived a very rough life, but now he has made it. He's kind of like the Wolf of Wall Street. I think they call him the Predator of Wall Street or something like that in this book. And so he should be in with society, but he's definitely still on the outskirts. So he kind of can't stand society because he has made a living. He is very wealthy, but they still don't let him in their kind of like inner circle. Then something happens to his sister at the beginning of the story, and he decides to set out on this revenge plot to get back at all of these families and take them out one by one. And so the heroine's family is actually one of those families on his list. And so at the same time, the heroine's uncle ends up telling her that they don't have any more money and drops her off at the hero's doorstep. So it kind of goes from there. It becomes this like marriage of convenience where they both realize they have some things to gain from this. And it is just so good. I love this one. It's definitely an older historical romance, and it's definitely one of those, like I said, the hero comes off as a jerk and super rude, but you have to pay attention to his actions instead of his words, because you can tell that he cares a lot for his family, cares a lot for the heroine, but like is definitely one to assume the worst, push her away, say super cruel things, but like he likes her at the same time. So yeah, I love this one. So good. There is the step back for it as well. So good. Next is The Unwanted Marriage by Katerina Mora. So this is book 3 in her Windsor series. This is a whole series of like billionaire families and arranged marriages in contemporary times, and it is so good. Basically in here, the hero has been in this arranged betrothal with the heroine for years, but he has nothing to do with her. And so one day his grandmother tells him like, hey, it's now your time to get married. Like, you need to go find that girl and marry her. And so he's kind of never paid attention to her, but now he sees another man paying attention to her, and he's like, hold up, like I have all of these possessive feelings now for you. And so he jumps in and is all in immediately. And it is just so good. I love this one so much. I liked seeing the heroine's story as well. So good. Just loved it so much. This whole series is such a fun time. Next is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I love this book so much. I have loved both of this author's books that came out in the past 2 years. I think The Dead Romantics was on my favorite list of last year, and her release this year, The 7-Year Slip, is on my list for this year. All of her books have this kind of like magical realism kind of element to them, and they are so good. Basically in this one, the heroine ends up inheriting this apartment, this house, where she can slip back into time, slip back 7 years into the past. So we see this kind of like dual timeline where in current day she's living, but in the past she's falling for the hero. And so we see this kind of develop and go from there. It is so good, so beautiful. The author in here also deals with a lot of emotional elements as well. So there are some content warnings for like grief and things like that in her books. So just know that going in. This one is easily a favorite. Like I kind of want to reread it because it was such a good time. Next is King Agreed by Anna Huang. This is book 3 in her Kings of Sin series, and easily my favorite by this author and in the series. This one is a marriage in trouble. They end up getting divorced, and so it's kind of like a second chance as well. So good. If you love a groveling hero, it is definitely that. I love this one so much. Basically in here, the hero and the heroine have been married for 10 years. It's their 10-year anniversary, and the hero is just very greedy, as the title suggests, where he came from nothing, built himself up. He's now a billionaire, and he wants to always just have the next next best thing, get more money, build his empire, all of these things. And so he's kind of pushed the heroine, his wife, to the side, who he loved and was devoted to for years, and has kind of like taken her for granted. And so she is over it when he ends up forgetting their 10-year anniversary at the beginning of the story. So she ends up leaving him, and then it is the entire book of him trying to win her back and do all these things to earn her love again and get her back into his life. I love this one. It's just so good. It felt very real. Like if you've been married before or you have been in a long-term relationship, like I feel like it will definitely hit different. It was just so good. I love this one so much. So next is Help Me Remember by Corinne Michaels. This is the first book in her Rose Canyon series, and I love this one so much. I did read the whole series, and this one is easily my favorite. The other two in the series were just okay for me. So basically, this is an amnesia romance where the heroine ends up forgetting her memory because of something that happens at the beginning of the story. She wakes up in a hospital, and the police are there, and the hospital workers, and everybody's telling her friends and family to not tell her anything that happened because they need to remember her memories because she's the only witness to something that happened. And so there's a bit of a mystery here. So she ends up kind of working with her brother's best friend, who is the hero, kind of work back through her memories and see what she remembers. So good. This book, I literally gasped once we got to the hero's POV when some things are revealed. Ugh, I love this one so much. Like, I was so giddy reading this book. Loved it so much. Next up is Between Wrath and Mercy by Jess Wisecup. This is book 1 in her adult fantasy romance series. Love this one so much. In this one, we have a second chance romance between the hero and the heroine. The hero and the heroine are also older. They're like, I think in their upper 30s, and the heroine has a daughter as well. And I love seeing this kind of like strong mom heroine in a fantasy romance. I feel like I never see that. So I loved that. And it kind of goes from there. I don't want to say too much, but the world and the characters had me addicted. I loved this second chance romance between the hero and the heroine. I love that all the characters are older here. They've made mistakes. They have things to work through and talk about and communicate about. It just was so good. I'm so excited to read the third book in the series that comes out next year. And last but certainly not least, this one is just at the bottom because it's the biggest book, so I had them kind of in size order for a bit, but this is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I love this book so much. Basically in here, the hero and the heroine are both doctors. They work at the same hospital, and the heroine is thinking she's up for this new position when the hero shows up, and kind of she thinks he's gonna take it, and so she kind of hates him from the start for not really justified reasons, and also has anxiety rep. So the hero is kind of upset about that and is nervous and anxious around her, so he ends up writing her letters, and so they kind of communicate like that through work and develop this friendship. We have fake dating in here as well, and this one is just so beautiful, so good. I feel like Abby Jimenez books are amazing. I love them so much. Kind of more women's fiction, but it does have a very strong romance as well. So good. Love this one. The hero in here, Jacob, like should be protected at all costs. He's so sweet. Such a cinnamon roll. Like, I love him so much. The anxiety rep in here was so good as well. Definitely recommend checking this one out. All right, those were my top 20 books for 2023. Definitely let me know in the comments if you have any of the same favorites as me this year, or what some of your favorites of the year were. Like I said, I can't wait for 2024 and all that it brings. Let me know if you're going on any cool trips, any book signings, any of those things. If you want to drop me an emoji as well, do a book stack because I just had a bunch of books. So yeah, let me know all the things. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.